Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawk fans, welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. We are back after a very tough, humiliating loss at home against the 49ers on Thanksgiving, 31-13. That doesn't even begin to tell the tale, really. Seattle sits at 6-5 now, 2 games back in the NFC West. If you had the tiebreaker, you can add another game in there. 6 games remaining against Dallas next, and then the 49ers again, and the Eagles. It's a gauntlet. We've talked about it before, but this is definitely gut check time. Gut check time, Keith. What are your just initial thoughts, and how do you kind of want to go with this thing today?
Well, I mean, we can kind of go through and look at some of how it happened and all of that, but I think for a portion of this season, it looked like this team, the Seahawks, were, they just needed to put it together and they would be ready to compete. And I think after this game, it's pretty clear they're not going to.
There's
That's
definitely
not who
a
they
gap.
are.
Yeah.
There is a talent gap still. And while disappointing because we thought they were better, well, they're now 6-5, right? This is a just above 500 team. And I think that's maybe about right. If this team ends up 9-8, I think we'd all feel okay with that. Not we wanted better, but I mean just like that they played to their talent level, and that's concerning. But that's kind of the expectation at this point.
Yeah, that is the concern. You take a look at the draft from 2022. That really kind of helped us get over the Russell Wilson hump and be more competitive than everyone thought that we would. And we ended up finishing the season 9-8. We were 1-out in the playoffs, but we got there. This year, you're kind of raising expectations. You've got another draft. You've got some free agency wins, and your quarterback is in his second season of beating expectations and in this offense. And so your expectations are, at least ours were, and most people had this as a top 10 offense, potentially top 5. We drafted and invested into the running back position in Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet, both in the second round. And the offensive line looked like it was going to come together and really be a strength of this team. The defensive line was completely revamped, but looked to be improved. Nuwasu coming back on an extension, adding some pieces in free agency. Tremont Jones being the primary guy, and going out at the trade deadline and getting Leonard Williams. And things have just not turned out the way that anybody thought that they would. They've regressed on defense even from last season statistically. And the offense is just nowhere near as competitive as we thought that they would be. They just have an amazing amount of issues scoring the football and moving the ball consistently. There's no consistent identity in this team, I think is one of the big issues. Seattle's lost 3 of its last 4 games. The one that they did win took a walk-off field goal, essentially.
Against a bad team.
Seahawks are 17 of 64 on third downs in the last 5 games. 17 of 64. 3 of 11 on third down against the 49ers, 30th in the NFL. We have 3 total touchdowns in the last 4 games, including Brooks' pick 6 in that defensive score. We were expected to have a top 10 offense, but in week 12, here we sit at 21st overall, 19th in scoring. which is a clear regression last year. Last year we were 9th. And we've got better tools, it seems. Before the bye, Seattle was averaging 27.8 points per game. In the past 7 games, we're averaging 16.9, and that includes the pick six. So, it's hard because there's so many issues that it's hard to put your finger on any one that if you figured it out, you could improve or you could win more games or score more points. And it's just not that simple. But so what happens in these situations is you get an over exaggerated response to a loss like this, to where the coach's job is on the line now. The offensive coordinator is horrible, has never called a single good play in his life, and he needs to go. The running backs are trash. Geno Smith is awful, etc. You can just go on and on. So really, I think for me, cathartically, is just kind of wash this thing out, figure it out, go through some of the numbers, find out really what the expectations were at the beginning of the season, where they're at now, and maybe we missed a little bit, and just kind of understanding if we are in that 2-year, second year of a 3-year rebuild, what is that exactly does that mean? Does Pete Carroll hang on and continue to finish this thing out and look towards that opportunity? Or is this it? And is this it for Geno? And does this team push the reset button again with the offensive coordinator in 2024 and somehow or another get better on defense with not a lot of resources for this coming season, including giving away a 2nd-round draft pick for that Leonard Williams deal and not having a lot of cap space?
Yeah. I don't know. They've got this team has a lot of talent. And they've had a couple of good drafts. And it's hard to say that Shane Waldron's the problem when look at what happened last year. And I mean, he took a team that had a fairly poor offensive line and Geno Smith at quarterback and made them, a top 5 offense for most of the year. Greatly outperformed any expectation. And so, yeah, it's hard to look at that and say, oh, yeah, he's definitely the problem. What we've seen is regression by our quarterback. We've seen regression by our offensive line because Cross got hurt and then hasn't been as good since he came back. But he, some of that's due to the injury. They've been without Abe Lucas this entire year. Possibility they'll get him back this week, and that would be a big upgrade.
Pete said he's going to play against Dallas,
which is expected. I mean, I think he could have gone on Thursday, but they chose not to because they didn't get a chance to practice. And so because of the Thursday game. So I think the waiting and then doing this week, I think that makes way more sense for them. And then, but overall, like you look at when your quarterback regresses and isn't playing as well, your offensive line isn't playing as well. It's going to create problems. And I think ultimately what we need to look at is looking to the future. It's time to get Oluwatimi more playing time. It's time to get Bradford in there over Haynes at every possible instance. They need to get Abe Lucas back in there because they need to realize that, okay, these guys, Haynes he's not the future. He shouldn't even be the present. So let's get someone else in there. Let's Jason Peters is, 74. He's not a guy that you're expecting to be with his team beyond this year. It's why play him at this point? He's definitely not giving you any kind of upside.
Just a note too, he played 16 snaps. He was injured. Forsyth came in, finished the game.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Lucas is coming back, so that should be a non-issue.
Yep. So you know what I mean? Like it's time to do that. Unfortunately, what you don't have is a young quarterback that you could go and throw in and see what they're going to do.
Yeah. So. Well, here's the deal though, too, Keith. And we've talked about this, and we knew that this gauntlet was coming up. We're 6-5. We're still in, we're the last seed in the wild card, and there's a little gap there too. And we've got 3 games where we could likely lose, but we've also got 3 games at the end of the season we could likely win, get into the playoffs. Do you blow it up to that extent at this point, or do you just keep trying to run the thing back? I know it sounds weird to kind of run it back with the same personnel and every week, but you're still in an opportunity where you're trying to give your team the best chance to win. And it's hard to know if replacing those players, as you suggest, gives the team the best chance to win, or it just gives us experience to look forward into the future. And it's hard to do that in the NFL.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not saying like, oh, let's just, let's tank the season away. I'm saying like, from what we've seen, Bradford's been better than Haynes. And he's a younger player. And I know you want to go with experience because you're worried about mistakes and whatever, but sorry, Haynes hasn't been good. So make the switch. I look at
Evan Brown's been struggling in the middle, especially against the really good defensive lines we've been facing lately.
Yeah, he played. There was a chunk early in the season where he was actually playing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't played well in a while. It's time to move on. So, yeah.
How about at quarterback, Keith? Seahawks have gotten 20 possessions without an offensive touchdown. And they've averaged 8 points a game against Baltimore, Los Angeles, San Francisco over the last 4 weeks. They've failed to reach 300 yards on offense. Just a ton of times. We've finished with 220 yards in this game. It's the 3rd time this season Seattle was held to under 225 yards. It's just been a struggle. And then, with the struggles with Geno and the line protections and so forth, you end up having that struggle permeate throughout. So DK Metcalf, for example, has been targeted 80 times this season, but has 43 receptions. Mm-hmm. Some of those are because they're just uncatchable balls, or rushed or behind. Some of them are DK Metcalf's just been dropping them. I don't know if that's a result of him just kind of tuning out, not being engaged or whatever, but in this game he was targeted 9 times, had 3 receptions for 32 yards, just a non-factor. It's just been it's been hard to watch. It's just hard to watch. We kind of know it was coming. It doesn't mean it's easy to watch. It doesn't mean it's acceptable, or we're not trying to make excuses for it or whatever. But it's hard to watch a team where you had expectations at a certain point and realize that the talent gap is still there, even though they've made all the investments. They've jettisoned some of the poorer players last year. Got in what we thought was a better roster overall. I think everyone agreed that it was a better roster, and it just turns out it's not. Either it's not a better roster, or the coaching has regressed too as well. Shane Waldron, while he has dialed up some great plans, especially early in the season, I thought had some nice play calls, timely calls, and so forth. But since that bye week, man, it's just been awful. The consistency has just been horrible. The calling of on 3rd downs and so forth clearly is something's wrong. I mean, we're ranked 30th in the NFL for a reason. We've got the personnel, but we're just not executing. And I know that comes from a number of different areas, including coaching, but it's been tough. And then you look on the defense, the run defense from week 1 to 8, Seahawks ranked 7th in EPA, first in success rate. In week 8 through 12, of course, Nuasu's not in the lineup anymore. Seattle's 32nd in EPA. Success rate is 30th. We're just not good. Baltimore and San Francisco combined had 450 yards rushing against us. Seattle's defense overall ranks 23rd now, 21st in points. We were, in that first 8 games, we were close to top 10. That's really fallen off. And it's both sides of the ball. And I think one of the reasons they've fallen off so much is because the offense has fallen off. Like, we can't keep any drives going. You take a look at the time possession over the course of the year. We're just middling there. And it's just it's a confluence of poor play overall. And it's hard to watch. It just is. We're 6-5, but you also know this team really doesn't have a future in the playoffs. It's just not equipped to beat teams that are equal or better than us, talent-wise.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. I think at this point we've had questions about Clint Hurt from the beginning, since he as the defensive coordinator. I think those have not been answered. And I think that's part of it. But I will look on the offense. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not convinced it's a Shane Waldron problem. And so I think it's more of a Geno Smith problem. He just is not playing this year the way he played last year. So, I mean, that's just...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's getting pressured. I mean, San Francisco had 6 sacks. They pressured him a ton. They hit him more. Our offensive line was playing poor. I watched the clock as far as the amount of time that he had to throw, and he was getting collapsed upon, touched, hit, pressured, or sacked within 2 seconds on multiple plays. I mean, their defensive line is stellar. It just is.
Oh yeah,
and they collapsed those pockets with 4-man rush all game long. They really didn't have to blitz. If they did, it was just for practice, because they just were getting to him with 4 guys. Now, that is seemingly making excuses for Geno. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that is a definite contributing factor, is this offensive line play, to why Geno is regressing a little bit. And, you take a look at the wide receiver corps, the running backs, the tight ends. Geno has all the tools he had last year plus some.
Mm-hmm.
And so the difference is the offensive line, possibly the play calling, and Geno's just seeing different things this year than he did last year. You play against different defenses. They've got more tape on them, etc. So, yeah. So what do you do to kind of get through this gauntlet and try to improve at the same time on things you've been struggling with all year, regardless of opponent? Mid-season, where you're, traditionally a Pete Carroll team will kind of rev this thing up a little bit and get ready for the playoffs. And this team, I don't know that has that ability. Seems like if we do get to the playoffs, which now is really dicey, iffy for sure, would be backing in and one and done. I mean, I don't know that you can really argue any other way. So how do you kind of approach this remaining 6-game stretch?
I mean, I think you've got to... They're still 6-5. They're still in the playoff hunt. I think you've got to go after it. Even if you lose these next 3 against, really good competition that all seem to be playing really well right now.
San Francisco came in much faster, much more physical, and better prepared to play both sides of the ball in this game. So it's talent, it's attitude, and it's coaching and execution. We're losing all three phases here, and almost every time we line up on the field. One of those things would help us. Improving on one of those things would help us, but we're just, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a struggle.
it is. Yeah, I mean, I look at all this and I go, okay, if we're going to do this as a team, like you've got to do something to mix things up. You can't just keep running out the same thing and expecting it to happen. A lot of people are saying, let's give Drew Lock a shot and see if he creates a spark, because maybe that's all the team needs. I think that the defense is doing enough most weeks to get the job done. To me, the problem is on the offense. And so make some changes. Like I said, if you want to play different offensive linemen, cool, go for it. You want to make a change at quarterback, I'm not convinced that's going to help, but sure, feel free, try. But I would say, okay, what we're doing isn't working in terms of our game planning and that kind of stuff. Let's change what we're doing. And Waldron's been doing like in this last game, like the offense did nothing in the first half. Made some great adjustments, came out, did some things. The offense moved the ball pretty effectively.
I think the most improved adjustment was attitude. Like they didn't want to get smacked in the mouth anymore. Finally, Charbonnet played 88% of the snaps in this game, but had 3 carries in the first half. They had 3 carries as a group in the first half, and Dallas was the only other running back to take any snaps, and he had 7 snaps in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. In their 6 wins, the Seahawks have averaged 116 yards rushing and a plus turnover ratio of 6. In their 5 losses, they've averaged 71 yards rushing and -2 in turnover ratio. It does come down to turnovers and clock management a little bit. And that's kind of it. We play from behind quite a bit. Our defense seems to not be ready to go out the gate. In fact, both Jaron Reed, and Jordan Brooks basically kind of said the same thing. It's like we were just not ready to play, which kind of points to a coaching thing a little bit. But Jaron Reed said it's gut check time. Guys need to check in with themselves and ask, are they playing with the passion and the heart that they need to play for us to win games? Because right now, we've got to pick it up. We have got to pick it up. Jordan Brooks said he didn't think the defense came out ready to go. First drive, they were running the ball, throwing the ball. I don't think we were all the way there mentally. That's why we ended up with 7 points, right? That's why they ended up with 7 points right out of the gate. And then Pete Carroll talked about not being ready and not using players to the best of their ability and putting players in position to be successful. He talked about the idea that he was going to start to get more involved in third down calls, specifically on the offense. I don't know if that's good or bad, but whatever we've been doing is not good. So, if he needs to kind of step in and rein Waldron in a little bit on the deep routes on third downs and so forth, considering our pass blocking failures, maybe that'd be a good thing. But I do think it's getting to the point in the season where you're talking about these sorts of things. We're not ready to play. We need to come ready. Guys need to look inside themselves. Coach Carroll is talking about, the whole offense is broken, essentially. when he came out on a couple of interviews. And so, yeah, I mean, changes at this point need to be made, because if you keep doing the same things, you're going to have the same results. And even on a team in Washington that we should have beaten, pretty well, we ended up with a walk-off field goal to win. So it's just not working. It's not coming together. I'd like to see them just kind of force feed the ball, run the ball a little bit, just to see if we can get some rhythm for Geno, and the play action. I think we do really well off play action, but I'd like to see the tight ends get involved. Guess how many snaps Will Disley had in this game?
Oh man, I don't want to look.
Yeah, Will Disley had 15 snaps in this game.
Considering what they re-signed him for and how much they're paying him, that's absurd.
Yeah, Parkinson had 20,
and that's been a thing all year. They've been playing Parkinson a lot, and Will Disley
with no
a
results.
lot less.
Yeah, and Fant had 33, but something's wrong. Like, I don't know what has gone on. For me, it is some of a Shane Waldron thing. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. I'm not an expert at play calling or designing schemes, all that kind of stuff. But something's not working. I mean, we're ranked 30th in the NFL in third down conversions for a reason. We're scoring much less this year than we were last year for a reason. We've got the personnel. Will Disley had 40 catches last year. Got less than 20 this year.
Well, and then Fant's the same way.
Yeah. No, we've been targeting our tight ends much, much less this year.
Yeah.
Now, you can attribute that potentially to trying to work Njigba into the offense a little bit more this year. Last year, we really didn't have a third wide receiver option that was viable, consistent. I don't know. I don't know, Keith. Nothing seems to be working. I think you're right in a sense that you can kind of pin this on Geno a little bit, because he's the head of the snake. I mean, he's the guy that's got to make it all work on the field. He's got to get the ball to his receivers. He's got to be able to put the ball into a place where guys have a chance. At the same time, a lot of the stuff that's killing our drives are attempts to take the shots down the field. And those shots are not being successful this season.
Mm-hmm.
You take a look at the shots. The only shot that worked in this game was that Njigba one-handed grab. Beyond that, we were 0 for whatever attempts at anything over 20 yards.
Yeah. I mean, that was an incredible catch.
It was. I put that down as the play of the game for sure.
That was a special.
We had 3 plays in this game that you could call good. D'Eskridge's 60-yard kickoff return, Jordan Brooks' pick 6, and the Njigba grab. That was it. Nothing else. Everything else was San Francisco. They could have won by much more. I mean, it was 24-3 at halftime.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it was lopsided. We were like 225 yards to 16 yards.
They had 3 touchdowns. Seattle had 1 first down at one point.
Yeah, they didn't even belong on the same field.
But then after halftime, the game was much more even. The defense played better. Did
that give you any hope?
It kind of does. Came out? Because they were able to come out and they made some adjustments and they did some things that needed to be done. And I was like, okay, that was the more of the team that we expected. Now, the offense still had its struggles, but against that defense, every offense is going to have its struggles. But they at least did some things. You know what I mean? They moved the ball. They scored some points. They had some opportunities to do some things and score some points. And so I it does give me some hope, because if you're able to move the ball at all against that defense, I think you're,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just better. So,
Yeah, interesting. So where do we go from here?
where do we go from here? To Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah, we go to Dallas. I honestly, I still have hope. Like I look at these games and I look at Dallas, and Dallas has got, a few issues that you can exploit here and again. That Seattle's going to be able to prevail in one of these games. That it's all going to come together. That Geno's going to have a stellar game. We're going to end up rushing for 165 yards, which we haven't done in a couple of years. But I just think it's just around the corner. We're going to be able to stop the rush again, like we did in the first 8 games. That's just completely gone now and disappeared. Leonard Williams has really turned out to be a great player, a great addition, but nobody else around him seems to be doing anything. The guys in the back end are struggling, just because I don't think we're able to get a pass rush. Guys are able to sit back in the pocket and kind of pick apart our defense. So at some point, I just feel like it's just all going to work. And maybe I'm just foolish that way, but I'm hoping that the Dallas game is the game that it happens, because we go back and play the 49ers again on their field. And then we've got the Eagles coming in. If there's a better team in the NFL at stopping the run than the Eagles, I don't know who it is. I think they average like 71 yards a game allowed on the ground, which is superior, just amazing. But anywho, anything else you want to cover in this show, or do we just kind of move on and come back together again, maybe for a midweek show? Games this week is Thursday. Mm-hmm. We'll definitely preview that, but it'd be nice to be able to get together and just talk with a little bit more distance between this game and that conversation.
Yep, I agree. There's just not, I mean, what else are you going to say about this game? This game is less fun than...
I thought I was going to do us a favor and our audience a favor by putting a couple days in between, because we're recording on Saturday morning. I was thinking, a couple days, get the emotion out of it. But you know what? It's still hard, because what are you going to say? You're right. What are you going to say?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So, yeah. I mean, when your team comes out and just lays an egg against a good team when you need a win,
mm-hmm.
it's hard to be positive. I mean, the loss was expected, but they needed to lose in a way where they looked competitive. That was not this.
It felt like the Baltimore game again, where you've got another team on the other side that's just at will, can do whatever they want against you.
They're just better.
And they're just better. Yeah. And I think that's the hard part. It's just knowing that we still have this gap. And no real way to fix it in season. So you just kind of have to hope for the best, a bounced ball occasionally, a turnover to help sway your team to victory. And that's kind of a sucky way to approach each game. There's always, that every game is an opportunity, but I was just going to say there's next year. I mean, there's continued improvement. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's when you get beat down a couple times pretty severely in a season, that doesn't happen very often in the NFL. It's pretty much a parity league, but there are teams that just stand out, and we're not there. We're not there. Mm-hmm. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform. Hit that subscribe button. We've got our own YouTube channel. When you find that, hit the subscribe button, share it, leave a comment. Always good to interact with our listeners there. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWSeahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.